What would Jesus Christ say if he could see the church today? What would Jesus say if he saw a long parade of cardinals in red-watered silk cassocks and lace robes? Would he think they were vested appropriately as successors of his apostles? He told his 12 apostles to take nothing for their first journey except a walking stick and a single tunic. Do these men travel in the spirit of the first apostles, or in the spirit of Renaissance nobility? What would Jesus say if he heard the bishops addressed as Your Eminence or Your Excellency? Didn't he tell his followers not to be like the Pharisees who demanded titles of honor like rabbi, teacher, master, or even father? What would Jesus say if he saw cardinals in long silk capes parading to seats of honor at ceremonies and styling themselves as princes of the church? Jesus criticized the religious leaders of his own day who demanded seats of honor in synagogues. What would Jesus think if he saw an enormous treasury of paintings, sculpture, jewels, architecture, vestments, books, and precious antiquities accumulated over the centuries by the church? He told us not to store up treasure on earth, where moth and decay destroy and thieves break in and steal, but rather to store up treasure in heaven. What would Jesus say if he realized his church claimed to be a sovereign nation among nations, with all the rights and privileges of a nation state, granted by the notorious fascist dictator Benito Mussolini in 1929 in the Lateran Treaty? He said his kingdom was not of this earth. What would Jesus say if he knew over 11,000 allegations of sexual abuse against children were made against over 5,000 priests in the United States between 1950 and 2019, and that the church has paid these victims in excess of $2 billion? The crimes against children by these Catholic priests are horrific and unforgivable. Abuse perpetrated by clerics, both within and outside the Catholic Church, is especially awful since we hold these individuals to a much higher standard of behavior and trust. And in the eyes of a child and others, clerics are representatives of the divine, the most holy, and of God. The spiritual damage adds to the psychological and physical damage suffered by these victims. Jesus used a child to teach his disciples that childlike faith is necessary for entrance into the kingdom of heaven. At the same time, he said that the Father has concern for all his little ones. In that passage, Jesus says, "But whoso shall offend one of these little ones, which believe in me, it were better for him that a millstone were hanged around his neck and that he was drowned in the depth of the sea." These crimes against these little ones were often committed with the full knowledge of the Catholic Church's leadership, that either failed to take appropriate action or, at worst, effectively aided and abetted further abuse by predators. Therefore, in the eyes of the law, the church is held liable in civil court for damages regardless of whether the abusive priest has been criminally charged, died, or left the country. In this insider-exclusive Justice in America special network TV expose, our news team goes behind the unbelievable and salacious headlines to meet with Michael Fiumara, founder and owner of Fiumara and Milligan Law Firm, to discuss how he and his law firm successfully settled numerous clergy sexual abuse cases against a former priest, Father Francisco Xavier Ochoa, and his former parish, the Santa Rosa Archdiocese, for $5 million. Father Ochoa held himself out as an authority as God's representative on earth to these devout families and their children who were sexually victimized. The survivors and victims ranged in age from 10 to 26 years old and covered 2 generations that made representation more challenging and difficult. Ochoa is the 17th priest from the Diocese of Santa Rosa to be accused of molesting a total of 62 children. In all, the diocese has paid or promised to pay dozens of people $20 million since 1990. Michael's expertise and advocacy in the area of childhood sexual abuse is the reason he has been joined in the fight to seek justice for survivors survivors by a leading North Bay child advocacy champion, former state senator Noreen Evans. Here's Michael to tell why he fights with such unbelievable passion and grace to get dignity and justice for these little ones Jesus so aptly named.
Why do I take on these cases so fervently, so strenuously, so vigorously? And these are child sexual abuse cases that matter to us, matter to society, matter to our law firm. It's because we care. These are kids who have been traumatized, victimized. Our law firm has clients coming in the door that appear completely devastated, traumatized, hurt, hopeless, downtrodden. They feel like nobody has listened to them. After we speak with them and work with them and help them with the counseling that they need, there's a huge change, especially when they see a semblance of justice, a semblance of some sort of relief that they've been believed, that somebody is listening to them. As a result of the Catholic Church paying out over $2 billion, I see some changes, and they're positive changes. I see the church actually doing what they should have been doing years ago. The advice that I give to parents is to be vigilant, to watch for signs that if your child has a change of behavior, don't be lackadaisical about it, and be very frank with your kids. Justice means to me equality. It means getting the victims, survivors, and those who have been wronged by a third party tortfeasor compensation, counseling. It means helping get the person back to where they were before they were abused. These types of cases have given me an idea that there's still a way to get justice for those who have been victimized, but at the same time, it gives me pause to think there are a lot of bad people out there. I think very strongly that our law firm is the best suited law firm and the best law firm to handle these types of cases. We get involved with the counseling that needs to be done to bring the individual back to a semblance of normalcy. I'm there to fight until the bitter end.
This is the Insider Exclusive, live from Santa Rosa, California. It is my great pleasure to introduce Michael Fiumara to the show. Welcome to the show, Michael.
It's a great pleasure to be here.
Good to see you.
Good to see you.
Tell our audience a little bit about your law firm. What type of law do you practice?
Well, we started this law firm in 1992 in Santa Rosa, California. Started off as law offices of Michael Fiumara. Soon I associated with other counsel, and now we have a firm that's referred to as Fiumara and Milligan Law. We practice in the areas of civil rights litigation. We're always on the side of the poor, the downtrodden, and those who are victims or survivors, whether it's sexual abuse or civil rights violations. And that's what we have been since the very beginning. We do criminal defense because we don't believe everybody should be put into a prison and into a rehab. Well, rehab is more the going way that we see things. We want people to be helped. So we do that as far as our mainstay, but we have a family law attorney who's a specialist, and she's incredible. We also have Noreen Evans, who joined our firm to work with us in terms of very specialized appeals cases. And we take on the school districts, which I'm very proud to say that we do with almost a vengeance, because they are brutal to the kids sometimes during suspension and expulsion hearings. That's something we really don't like for them to overreach, especially with education. Once the educational learning is interfered with the suspension or expulsion, especially an expulsion, it's over for some kids. So that's it in a nutshell.
Now, there are all types of law a lawyer can practice.
That's right.
They can work for the big guys. They can work for the major corporations, the Exxon, the Mobiles, the IBMs of the world. But you don't do that.
No, they have a flotilla of attorneys on their side, and I want to even the playing field. So I work for those who need us and who can benefit from our law firm's advocacy and fierceness. I wasn't born in Brooklyn for nothing.
I often have found that people like yourself who are driven, have a mission to help those that are less fortunate than us, had something happen maybe in their past that drives them. Is there something in your history?
Glad you said that, because that's true. I saw how my father, who had a third grade education, had an Italian accent, and how he was treated as an Italian American. I see that with our clients today, the Hispanic clients, the Latino clients. And I speak Spanish as a result, because I really believe I can communicate. What I like to do is fight hard for people who have it rough. And it gives me great pleasure. Like you said, I'll never retire. No, I won't. I think I'm going to fight until until I'm in the grave, because I really do believe in justice. That's what drives me, fairness. So I saw how my father was treated, and he was fierce. He took a bone, and I'll have to explain. They said to him, "Mr. Fiumara, we're not going to give you your permit." And he's like, "Well, why not?" "Well, we made the decision." It was an arbitrary and capricious decision. This was at a planning board meeting. I have my master's degree in city planning, so there you go. They said to him, "We're not going to do it." And my sister needed a bedroom. He walks in with a bone that he got from a Brooklyn butcher and slammed it on the table and said, "Here's your bone of contention." And the police tried to arrest him, but he said, "I know my First Amendment right." That scared them. Third grade education, he was fierce. Here I am with a degree in master's in city planning from an Ivy League institution, Phi Beta Kappa, Rutgers. And sometimes I'm fearful. No, I'm not. I have my bulldozers, and I also have my steamroller right over their heads. That's how I really feel. That's why I'm very much a lawyer. I'm fighting for the people.
Glad you are. Did your dad end up getting the permit?
He did.
So today we are here to talk about a case you were very much involved with, whether you represented, I think it was maybe 8 or 9 boys who had been molested by a father, Francisco Ochoa, correct?
That's correct.
Would you tell our audience a little bit about the facts of the case and Ochoa?
I'd be happy to. Father Xavier Ochoa was a very charismatic Latino, Spanish-speaking, bicultural priest who the diocese loved him because he helped raise money. He was collecting money for the church. He was, like I said, Spanish speaking, and he was God to the Latino community. And he abused his trust because what he did was he molested, he raped, he fondled, he did everything you can imagine to young boys. And there was one girl that was in our plaintiff's class, and she was spared most of the horrendous things that happened to the boys, but still, he was a groper too, like I said. So bottom line, these 9 plaintiffs, I represented them, but I started off with one because Father Ochoa, at least he told the diocese, Father Walsh, "Look, I committed an act. I fondled an altar boy, a 10-year-old altar boy." This Bishop Walsh, should have immediately contacted CPS.
They're required by law.
That's exactly, it's a mandated report. The mandated reporting law is very strict right away. Instead, what he did was he waited 3 days, he alerted his diocese attorney, and that diocese attorney said, "Call the sheriff." So the 4th day allowed Mr. Ochoa, Priest Ochoa, to flee to Mexico so he couldn't be prosecuted. That got national news because he frequently violated the state mandated law to report. And right away, I was given a case by a man who was about 25 years old, ready to, the law was ready to end on his behalf. The statute of limitations was ready to expire. And that man came forward with his wife. And they said, "We would like you to represent us." And that led to then hearing about the boy who was molested, the altar boy, and therefore that led to the collection of basically 8 additional plaintiffs. So it started out as very, very small, but this Father Ochoa was a, like I said, charismatic man who took advantage of these children, and who then the bishop tried to use the mandated law to his benefit and say he didn't have to report. He had a reasonable time. That's not true. He didn't have a reasonable time. It's very clear in the mandated statute. He has a time frame that's very, very tight. Also, he blamed, I'm talking about Bishop Walsh, blamed his attorney, saying that he gave him poor advice. Bishop Walsh ended up having to plead to misdemeanor endangerment charges, and because it was his first offense, guess what he got? On the wrist, and was able to do a it was called a pre-plea diversion program. But I have never seen such an organized effort, such a criminal enterprise as the Catholic Church. And I'm so ashamed to say that they've been getting away with it for so long. But my case in 2007 was a pioneer case because at that time we didn't have Assembly Bill 218, which allows now a lot more leeway. There's a 3-year window of opportunity to open up the case.
3 years from what time?
It's 3 years no matter what. You could be 65 years old or 75 years old. You have a 3-year window of opportunity under Assembly Bill 218, which was enacted by the governor in 2020, January 1st.
Which brings me to the next question, okay? Some of the challenges in pursuing these cases. Let's say somebody 65 says, you know, I was molested by this father. The father's probably deceased, and everybody that was associated with him is gone.
Right.
How do you handle a case like that? How do you pursue it?
Well, I'm working right now with another council in the East Bay, and what we have is we have a good relationship with many of the diocese attorneys who know where the bodies are buried. We have a lot.
In other words, the same priest might have been accused by other people.
That's exactly right. That's exactly right.
And that's in your favor, obviously.
Of course it is. And they usually have a record of abuse. I know that Father Ochoa was pulling young boys out of their homes.
While he was drunk, wasn't he?
That's exactly right. And unfortunately, as pulling the young boys out of their homes, their parents wrote letters to the diocese and they went unanswered. So there was notice at that time. The notice requirement's different under AB 218. I'm really glad that it's much more relaxed. So we don't have that hard burden to overcome. So anyone out there that needs us, we're there to fight for them, even if they're 90 years old. But then again, at that age, how many witnesses are dead and how much of the evidence is hidden or concealed?
In these type of cases, like in the Ochoa case, what are some of the challenges and the hurdles you got to get over? Because if I remember correctly, you settled this case.
Well, the publicity was absolutely everywhere. For some reason, it hit a chord. I think the newspapers and the press, television stations really wanted to capture this because Little Santa Rosa is a town that, it's not a big city. It's about 150,000 people, and they wanted to find out what's really going on. And there was notice before with various other trials before that took place with the same diocese. So it wasn't anything new. And so why is this happening still? And here's a young attorney, I was much younger than 2007, who was taking on this Holy Roman Catholic Church, and they were crying, we have no money, we're bankrupt.
And they all say that, don't they?
Right, but I looked at their assets and I looked at some of their property and I told him that at the one of the hearings, and he said, oh, well, we'll throw in $20,000 of my own money. And that's why it was $5,020,000 because
$20,000 came from Bishop Wall.
That's exactly right.
Paid that out of his personal.
Out of his personal proceeds or wherever the heck that came from.
Now let's talk about some of these challenges, because I've seen in many of these cases where that particular diocese will say they're broke. Or they'll try to fraudulently transfer some of their assets offshore, or transfer it some other place where nobody can get at it. My question is, you and I were both raised Catholics. My question is, why, if you're practicing Christianity and the precepts of Jesus Christ, where does this attitude come from of admitting responsibility and wanting to do the right thing for the victims?
It seems like the power trip of being, the almighty substitute on earth that the priests have, and the politics with the diocese, the bishops, all leads to concealment and shuffling around the priest. I really think it's something that is so embedded in their system and
in their mentality. It's almost like power corrupts, and absolute power corrupts absolutely, isn't it?
That's right.
The status of this case, you settled the case. Let me ask you some general questions for those who may have a pending case right now. What should they do, in terms of if they think they were molested, what should they immediately do? Considering AB 218, 3-year statute of limitations.
Most importantly, they need to take care of themselves. They need to go to a counselor who is trained in the area of sexual abuse, and they need to take care of themselves and really try to heal in the steps that are necessary for them. Each person's different. Some people are highly traumatized by this abuse, and it depends on the abuse and so on and so forth. The next thing they should do is contact a competent legal counsel, and we have a lot of experience in this realm. I know Michael, the other Michael, and myself have worked on dozens and dozens of cases, whether it's suing a Catholic church or a Christian camp, or in some cases, there's some school district cases, and I can get into that as well. But we've also managed to work on Boy Scout cases, and they're pretty egregious because Michael was able to get the list, the perversion list, or the secret list of all the predators unleashed or released to the public. So that was something we did and something we're proud of.
What have you found the similar traits amongst those who have been victimized as children? What happens later in their life?
Many of them become separated and disjointed. Their mindset is that they are to blame. They start internalizing the feelings. There's almost self-hate sometimes. It depends on the person. There's drug addictions. There's failed marriages. I see a pattern. There's also a great deal of anger sometimes, and that gets transferred into various other means. So I'd have to say, for instance, it's a whole litany of things.
With counseling, can some of these people be helped?
They can be helped, but it's going to be a long, hard road. I'm just telling you that right now. It's not easy. And they can be helped because we have great experts who do a great deal of in-depth work with them, and that's part of the settlement. That's part of what we try to do. It's incredible that we have done what we've done because some of them are so damaged. It's so sad.
Well, congratulations on the case, and I want to thank you for being on the show.
Thank you very much. But $5 million sounds like a lot of money. Most of it, we make sure, goes to the victims because in most cases, when there's minors, we don't take 33 1/3%, much less. It's not about the money. It's time for justice, and it's time to even the playing field, and it's time right now to make sure this kind of abuse stops completely. Cease and desist.
Absolutely. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thanks for joining us. You can get more information about our guest and the issues at insiderexclusive.com.